You and I have a rendezvous with destiny. We'll preserve for our children this, the last best hope of man on earth, or we'll sentence them to take the last step into 1,000 years of darkness.
You take on the intelligence community, they have 6 ways from Sunday of getting back at you.
We're living in a very dangerous time right now, and liberalism has lost their cotton-picking mind.
The Trump folks, if they found out how we knew what we knew about the Trump staff's dealing with Russians, that they would try to compromise those sources and methods.
Nobody ever said anything about resisting Obama. They went at him on legitimate arguments.
I really do believe that much of what you saw coming out of Trump's mouth was a play from Putin's playbook.
Welcome to the Abolitionists Roundtable, your all-access pass to exposing fake news, the resistance, and Barack Obama's shadow government undermining American progress. Be a part of the conversation at 734-822-1600. And now, your all-American hosts, Del Marsh and Phil Stargell.
And good morning. This is the Abolitionist Roundtable in Michigan. I'm your host, Phil Stargell. I am riding solo again this morning, and we're just holding down the fort until my wingman and co-partner and co-founder of Ardor, Michigan, returns to the microphone, and that we are anticipating shouldn't be too much longer. Main thing is today I want to call attention to some of the things that are in the news today, and most outstandingly blatant in the hatred for America and the hatred for our president. I'm going to show you a parallel to that. But I want to start off with I'm sure that most of you understand that Hispanics and Latinos have replaced so-called African Americans as the number one in population of the minority groups in America. And but even still, it hasn't done anything to sort of erase the fact that Black America is still the number one group in America for poverty, being in poverty, and that's despite a 50-year war on poverty by the Democrat Party. If nothing else, that should tell us that we are on the wrong track, and we've been on the wrong track for a while. 50 years in the war on poverty, and the only thing we can do is, in this report that I was reading from U.S. News and World Report, says that there's about a 1% reduction in the poverty rate for Black America. And that's, to me, unacceptable. But it's unacceptable because I think we're barking up the wrong tree. I think if you want to reduce poverty, you have to do that from within whatever community you're trying to get to raise their numbers of poverty. And it certainly doesn't help that all of our immigration policies are to bring in more people that are in poverty. I mean, the number one group now, Hispanics and Latinos, they're right next to us in the rate of poverty. It's a very small difference between the rates, and yet still we're using the same tactics to try to erase a statistic, the statistic of poverty. We're trying to erase that by using government programs. It's never going to work. It's only going to impoverish the nation, and that's basically what you see when you see the size of the deficits that we're running. And what do we do to try to end that poverty? We do such things like importing STEM candidates for jobs that would do a good job in erasing poverty here in this country. But in the meantime, what we've got is a stopgap measure to bring in people from India, China, and a few other countries, Korea, South Korea, and even north of the border, Canada. They have a very small input into our STEM programs, but nothing is going to do what those countries that are sending those people over here is doing now. What they're doing now is putting a large emphasis. China and India are making a large contribution to this country by sending those people over here that have the qualifications for STEM. I say that this is a mistake, and it's proven by what happens. What was that, Monday, when the trucker, the guy driving the truck, I'm not going to mention his name, I have it here, I'm not going to mention his name, but when he ran down, I think it was 7 or 8 people, what we find out he was here because of what they call a lottery for diversity program. I mean, I think the United States is probably the most diverse country in the world, especially through their immigration policy. Nobody else in the world is as liberal with their immigration policy as we are. I mean, we go around the world looking for people to bring into this country, and proof of that is this bill that Schumer put over on us. I mean, and I'm just going to show you the disrespect that came down when they reported on this story. And I think it's a disgrace of how they portrayed this story. I got this off of the internet page. And it said President Trump and some of his allies on the far right have found a new culprit in Tuesday's deadly terrorist attack in Manhattan. I mean, that is a nice way to start off with an article about the President of the United States. Him and his far-right buddies. I mean, this is... And it says, as details emerged about the incident, prominent right-wing commentators and news outlets seized on a report from New York's ABC affiliate that the alleged attacker had come to the United States from Uzbekistan under a State Department program known as the Diversity Visa Lottery. Now, this is exactly what I'm talking about. I mean, here we have something known as a diversity visa program. When we are letting people into this country on every continent, on every country available to bring people out. All they have to do is say, "Oh, I need sanctuary. Oh, I need refugee status," and we bend over backwards trying to let them in. We don't ask them whether or not they're loyal to this country or want to be to this country for the correct reasons. We just open the door and let them in. And it says, long before government officials publicly confirmed the ABC report, Trump slammed. What happened to the president that goes before Trump? But it says here, Trump slammed the Visa lottery and said he'll ask Congress to immediately initiate work to get rid of this program. And I couldn't concur more. I am today starting the process of terminating the diversity lottery program, President Trump told reporters before a midday cabinet meeting, adding, "It sounds nice. It's not nice. It's not good." The president on Wednesday also criticized Schumer, who in 1990 introduced the House bill that helped create the Visa program. But I remember this stuff, and I remember who was the originator of it. It was that Kennedy guy, Ted Kennedy out of Massachusetts. This is his stuff from the Irish Republican Army and the terrorists that reigned over in Europe during that time. Years later, in 2013, the New York Democrat was among a bipartisan group of lawmakers who sought to end the program. But it's still being assailed by Trump and others. You see, he tried to end it. If he wanted to end that program, he would have ended that program. It would have been done. But at the same time, now he has made statements saying that he was responsible for the program and he was going to try to protect that program. So which is it? Does he want to end the program, or does he want... You see, the whole idea of this country is as an experiment in, as they say, democracy. I say republicanism, because this is a republic, not a democracy. And when things are done and tried, if they are successful, then we ought to imitate that pattern and install it around the country. That was the original idea of this country. Not to have one guy say, well, I'm the king or I'm the dictator, and this is how the policy is, and I don't care how bad it's proven to be, we're going to continue it. This country says if something works, we duplicate it. If it doesn't work, we end it. Well, that used to be the idea. Nowadays, if you go in and look at Congress, you'll see all of these idiotic ideas that they've come across, and there's no hope of ever getting them taken out of daily practice. I mean, one department after another, one agency after another, one bureaucracy after another has proven to be a failure. Give them to you. I'll give you one or two of them. What about the Department of Energy? Never has produced a barrel of oil. How about the Department of Education, where they teach our kids to be un-American as they can be, to hate this country? And you hear them say it daily, and you see it daily. And they are the cause of us electing individuals into our legislatures around the country and in Washington, D.C. that should never even be a dog catcher, let alone a state legislator or a state senator, or goodness knows that they should never be able to get to Washington where they can really do some damage. But they are there, and they stay there, and people continue to elect them because of this backward education system. That, and we'll get to that, but I'm going to finish out this article. In news, interviews, blogs, posts, and tweets, conservatives blamed the Democrat, saying he was responsible for allowing the 29-year-old man's entry into the country. Trump joined the criticism early Wednesday, hours before declaring that he would ask Congress to terminate the program. Well, I say good luck with that, because as soon as he does, some judge somewhere is going to stop that immediately and say that somebody is being harmed or somebody is losing their rights to enter this country, when there, as far as I know, there's never been a right for anybody to come into this country. It's at the discretion of the laws that were supposedly set down by Congress. But that's a very hard thing, because guess what? You got probably 90% of the Congress that are on board with the idea that the immigration system in this country is broken. No, it's not broken. We're just not using it. If we go by the laws of this country, there would be a lot less problems. We wouldn't have who knows how many illegals in California and New York, Chicago, and places like that, and Detroit. Let's not forget Detroit, where they have openly declared they are a sanctuary city that protects the laws of lawbreakers, protects the rights of lawbreakers. Again, protects the rights of lawbreakers. And yet and still, California is going to say that they want to secede from the Union, much like what happened in the Civil War, where they seceded from the Union. Are we going to have to keep California in the Union by force? It's crazy, I tell you. Well, anyway, what I'm in the line of this here, what we're going to do is give a few little ideas of how we might be able to counteract some of this craziness that's going on in Washington. And it says that there are programs of integration, staying with the integration thing here, that allows people to come into this country on STEM programs and this program that the New York truck driver came in under. But they all have their little niches, and they all have their people protecting them, these congressmen that made these laws, and they are in place, and you can't get these things out of place because of the obstructionism of people like Chuck Schumer. And so in this particular instance, this was the what did we call it? The diversity lottery. So, but what about the other ones? The STEM programs. Now we've got thousands of people that have come into the United States under the STEM program, and the H-1B visa program that come in here because they have a real good possibility of being hired, or they may have even been requested into the country under these programs. Because we are currently doing such a bad job in our education system, we have to go offshore to bring in people that can fill these slots of these jobs that are open, good paying jobs. People that need PhDs and advanced degrees in order to do these jobs. I don't necessarily believe that they have to have those but it is a requirement by the auto industry, the electronic industry, even the education, higher education. They do a lot of hiring through these H-1B programs and things like that, they don't have, I mean, of all of the people that are going to college today in America and being up to their necks in debt after 4 years, and then let's not even think about the additional money that it costs for advanced degrees, and yet and still we have high unemployment in our inner cities. Now these are specialized programs, H-1Bs and the STEM programs, but we are still letting millions of people into this country through legal immigration and illegal immigration that have no particular skills. This truck driving murderer, assassin, I mean, what skills did he bring in? Only thing, and that's why they call it a lottery, I guess, because he was allowed into this country, and that to me is a lottery. But I'm gonna just to be basically fair. That's what people always say. I want to be fair about this, but. When you look at people and they come into this country, and we have people unemployed that are fully capable, I believe, in my mind, of being taught to be just as proficient as the people with these degrees, these advanced degrees, I think that there should be a specialized program to train a bunch of American people. When we talk about America first, this is what I believe should be looked at before we do anything else. We need to look at our immigration program and find out if there is an alternative that we could use people from the inner cities, from some of the outlying rural cities of America. I want to go right quick to the line and get Gary from Hazel Park. Good morning, Gary.
Hey, Phil. Good morning.
Hey, good morning.
The way I'm looking at this, and it's really kind of depressing, the state of the union in America these days, because you know quite well, and a lot of us have figured out that the communists have pretty much done us in, because they wanted to weaken education, like you said, weaken the family, weaken our faith, weaken our everything. I mean, just attack America. Our judicial system has been corrupted. And they had the notion that they were going to reform America into the image of Marx. That's what their big plan was. Mm-hmm. Well, they didn't expect another force, a stronger force, a force that was a more malevolent Islam to come in behind them and try to reshape America in the form of Muhammad. So now we're going to have a clash of cultures that all of them do not want America to be free, like you and I do. And so the more we struggle, the more they struggle, and it gets harder and harder. But we can't stop. I mean, the destiny of America depends upon you and me and the people who believe in freedom and liberty to keep fighting. Because if we don't, we are sunk. We almost lost the country with Hillary Clinton.
Yes, we did.
Even though Donald Trump is a flawed man, just like everybody else, he is right now the best hope for America. And until we find somebody better in 8 years or so, we got to go with him.
Well, he's the guy that is capable of pulling the plug on the swamp and getting the drain started. Now, because no other Republican that we've ever elected has been willing to pull that plug. That's the first process in draining the swamp. He's got to be able to get in there and pull that plug first.
Yeah, then you got to hose it down after you start draining it.
That's right. Hey, listen, if you'd like to join the conversation, you can join us at 734-822-1600, and we're going to go to some messages, and we'll be back right after those messages.
You're listening to the Abolitionists Roundtable with your hosts, Del and Phil. They're exposing the left's underground resistance while leading the charge in the fight for liberty. Join the conversation at 734-822-1600.
Hello, I'm Milt, and this is, logically speaking, Uncensored, Zero Tolerance. In the lexicon of political correctness, zero tolerance means rejection of anything liberal, left-wing collectivists deem unacceptable. Liberal left-wing collectivist agendas have empowered and instituted zero tolerance throughout the United States and the world as a dogma of domination. The effectiveness of zero tolerance as a stratagem cannot be denied, as witnessed by the fact that principled people are bullied into silence, afraid to speak up, speak out, and say, do, or criticize aberrant behaviors, perversions, immoralities, or evil indoctrinations. And despite its totalitarian, oppressive disregard of civil entitlements, zero tolerance has been endorsed and received by a large segment of society, particularly in the citadels of academia and politics. I contend and stress that if zero tolerance is good enough for those who hate the United States, then it should be good enough to be used as a deterrent weapon against our enemies, both domestic and foreign, by patriots who cherish the United States. As the United States confront multiple internal cultural wars of incivilities and inhumanities such as murders by abortion and radical moral decay, the nation can ill afford the luxury of tolerance towards entities fighting to achieve our demise. Therefore, zero tolerance is an essential necessity. So, as a proud American who is not ashamed to proclaim allegiance and loyalty to the United States, I propose that the nation embrace the format of zero tolerance and apply it to all instigators and insurrectionists whose actions or deeds are detrimental to the United States, and especially to traitors and perpetrators of treason, both home and abroad. Under the jurisdiction of zero tolerance, trespassers who violate our borders should be classified as criminals and harshly penalized. And this should include green card and visa violators. Zero tolerance should also be applied to include anarchists and seditionists with provisos of incarceration and or deportation. So I implore all who love America to fight for that which is right and petition those in power to endorse and impose zero tolerance upon terrorists, environmental fascists, and climate change hoaxers, socialistic communism, hate America factions, children abusers and female genital mutilators, fake gender promoters, Democrat Party revisionist history, and all ideologies that advocate destruction, death, and violence upon Christians and Jews. If zero tolerance is implemented by the right people for the right causes and right reasoning, like the curtailment of our enemies, then it is a good thing, because zero tolerance against enemies of the United States is not a vice. I am Milt, logically speaking, uncensored, saying, think of it.
And that was Milt Harris, and with another hard-hitting commentary. Thanks again for Milt Harris, and you can hear Milt Harris on another station up the dial, but he has very, very graciously agreed to send those over to us, and we are very grateful for him. The next thing I'd like to do this morning is make a little bit of an announcement for for the best state senator probably in the country, maybe the world, for Senator Pat Colbeck. He's now, I'm sure everybody knows, announced that he's running for governor. But I was asked to read this by former co-host Janice Daniels, Mayor Janice Daniels. She wanted me to read this. There's a fundraiser for Pat Colbeck at Kim's Restaurant. That's on 102 East Long Lake Road in Troy, Michigan. And it's hosted by Manish Bezi, Nick and Mary, and Shereso. That is 5... Okay, there is a charge. There's a cost of $100 per person, $150 for two. And it's again, like I said, it's at Kim's Restaurant, 102 East Long Lake Road, Troy, Michigan. And that date is November the 13th from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. And it's again to elect Patrick Colbeck, fundraiser to get him in the running and get his name out there. And folks, you couldn't ask for a better candidate, and you certainly couldn't ask for a better governor if he was able to get into that office. Boy, I'm pulling for him, and I'm going to do whatever I can to help in that effort. And so from that point on, I'm going to go to something about the reason why I talked about these STEM programs and this H-1B visa program is because this is an article from 2014. It was in my stack of stuff, and I happened to go through it, and it's from the U.S. News and World Report. And it gives a global view on high-skilled labor complemented by metropolitan skills. Training will enable U.S. companies to obtain the workforce they need to keep America competitive now and in the future. This is, it says, this is the search for skills. The demand for H-1B immigrant workers in U.S. metropolitan areas. And this is what they came up with, and this is what we see happening now. And like I said, this is from 2014, early 2014. It says, finding an analysis of the geography of H-1B visa requests, particularly in the metropolitan areas with the highest demand between 2001 and 2011, reveals that demand for H-1B workers has fluctuated with economic and political cycles over the last decade and reflects a wide range of employers' needs for high-skilled temporary workers. Employer requests have exceeded the number of visas issued every year except 2001 to 2003, when the annual cap was temporarily raised from 65,000 to 195,000. Employers requesting the most H-1B visas are large companies subject to the cap, specializing in information, technology, consulting, and electronics manufacturing. Science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, STEM occupations account for almost 2/3 of requests for H-1B workers. Healthcare, finance, business, and life sciences occupations are also high in demand. Over the last decade, the federal government has distributed about $1 billion from H-1B visa fees to fund programs to address skills shortages in the United States workforce. $1 billion. Now, what I suggest is somebody should ask, What did they do with that? What did the government do with that $1 billion that they received from fees related to the STEM programs? My suggestion would be that you start up a tech program in the inner cities, in some of the rural cities, and give these young people trained into it so we don't have to go offshore to find people to do something. Now, did they do it? I don't know. I'm going to have to look and find out just what they did with that money. And I will get back to you when I find that information out. Okay, 106 metropolitan areas had at least 250 requests for H-1B workers in the 2010-11 period, accounting for 91% of all requests, but only 67% of the national workforce. Considerable variation exists among these metro areas in the number of workers requested and the ratio of requests to the size of the total metro workforce. On average, there were 3.3 requests for H-1B per 1,000 workers in the 106 metro areas compared to 2.4 for the nation as a whole. See, this tells you right there that there are many young people that are working in restaurants instead of working but the problem is, and this is where I got another related story of where it tells you that Hispanic, Latino, and Black American students are only 5% of the STEM courses in their curricula. So that means that we have got to figure out a way to boost those numbers, and then we have got to get these kids trained so we don't have to continue to keep going offshore. But has that happened? We don't know, because guess what? Only thing we know is that you look in the metropolitan Detroit area and you can see that that a number of the STEM jobs are being filled by people from India, people from China. Now, I'm not disparaging anybody, but there seems to me that that somebody in Congress has dropped the ball. We can see where congressional people, especially the Black Caucus, can be aware of every time that there is a police involved shooting incident, and they have something to say on it. But how come they can't see that there's a disparity between the people entering our colleges, because we know that the colleges participate in those protests that we see because of the aftermath of a police-involved shooting. So how is it that they don't understand that only 5% of these college kids that are Black, Hispanic, or Latino are involved in the STEM programs and in jobs that would upgrade their status to the point where they could probably fish their own way out of poverty? So what I'm talking about is this is a definite point to leadership, and especially in these communities, Hispanic, Latino, and Black, or so-called African American. And the main emphasis coming out of these communities is that there is no equality, that they're being shafted. Well, the thing that needs to be stressed is that there is plenty of equality in opportunity, but it might not be a lot of equality in the results because people aren't pursuing the opportunities that are available. So let's put a little more emphasis on trying to get Latino and Hispanic and so-called African Americans to take advantage of the opportunities a little bit more and stress a little bit less about somebody taking those opportunities from them, because nobody's taking those opportunities from them. But it might be helpful if the Congress people, such as, again, I will point to the Black Caucus, if they might just one time, instead of saying it's racism, how about it's non-participation? How about saying that we need to find out where there's a need and fill that need? But we got colleges that are overflowing with people. But what are they taking? I don't know, basket weaving, I suppose, because when you got people that are willing to send to places like China, all the way to China, and import people from those countries to come in here to fill jobs that pay very handsomely. And yet and still, we have 5% participation in the preparatory courses that would put you in line to be able to do those jobs. There's something very wrong with that. So there was a saying by Booker T. Washington about some of his fellow former slaves that said that they were more interested in grievance than they were solutions. And that's what it seems to be the problem today. We see people more informed, more inclined to want to keep an issue as a wedge to keep dissent going than they are of trying to solve the problem. Every problem that we have in this country could be solved if we did not want to make an issue out of every problem. Let's go to work and solve the problem instead of trying to prolong the problem and make more trouble than the initial problem probably had in the first place. So then we go to what I consider the absolute most, the biggest cause of all of these problems. We have, it's political. It's a political thing. They politicize everything. The reason why they politicize everything is because, as the caller earlier said, that people are vying for the control of this country. And these are outside groups. But they are abetted, in my estimation, by status among our legislature. People that are statists, people that are not liberty conscious. They don't care about your or my liberty. They care only about power. And they will take away every liberty that you and I have in order to maintain their power. And as a matter of fact, we almost, in this country, almost give liberty away because we are so determined to believe in the good of the intentions of a person because they are free with somebody else's money. If a person tells you, well, look, I think everything ought to be free. So what's the incentive for you to go out and work when somebody's giving it to you? And that's exactly what the Democrat Party has been able to fool people into believing, that something is free. Nothing is free, and Obamacare should have proven that to everybody. But guess what? When chips came down, people wanted to keep this monstrosity they call Obamacare. And we'll talk about you badly if you talk about taking it away. I mean, it's not free, and I just have never been able to understand that. But that's the way things go. When somebody else has access to other people's money and they care nothing about how much of that money they spend. And you can look at it right on down the line from every portion of this country. All of the problems: immigration, poverty, and every malady that we have for this country can be solved if we could just get people to be more responsible with the taxpayers' money. And I don't see that in the future nowhere. But those are the things that we need to do. We need to keep hammering home the idea that the only way we're going to solve these problems is to solve the problem of our lawmakers having a cavalier attitude about how they spend our money. And that's why I personally back the candidacy for governor for Patrick Colbeck. And I think probably most thinking people have had the same idea once they find out about it. So what I suggest any of you do that have any doubts about it, just look into what his record is and where he stands on the issues. And then look at some of the other people that are in the race. We have a chance in this country and in this state to do something that we would never be able to do because of the fact that we have control of 3 different branches of the government, and certainly we have a great percentage of the governorships in this country and the legislatures. So I'm just thinking that what we have to do is just maintain the control and find and get some support behind the people that are trying to make the changes that need to be done. And if we do that, we have another successful election cycle. We can push back the forces of evil that send these people into this country to do damage and do destruction and try to further divide the country more so than what it is today. And maybe if we can once get to that point, then we could see who the people within this country are holding us back from making the progress that we should be making by having such a good control over the political scene in Washington, D.C. For that, we will be in touch with you next week, and hopefully things will be better and a clearer picture will begin to form about who is going to be our next governor and senators in Michigan. The Abolitionist Roundtable invites the WAAM TALK1600 listeners to continue the roundtable discussions by mailing correspondence to Art of Michigan, Post Office Box 135, Garden City, Michigan 48135.
Or follow Phil and Del at artofmichigan.com. You can also send emails to artofmichigan@hotmail.com. And most of all, continue to listen every Saturday and tell a friend.